Hello, everyone. I hope you are having a good time with building or reconstructing your life map, and I hope it's become spiritually beneficial for you. It's always good to look back. Even at the bad times, you notice that in my last um, slide, it was disaster, utter disaster. And I really brought it upon myself, but out of the ashes, God always brings something good and new. And that's if we're trying to follow Him the best we can. And God's always faithful to His promises, even when we muck up. So here we go, a new chapter, and I call it Starting a Family. I met Kathy, my wife, in April 1992 and married in December of 1992. It was a blind date. We both knew um, the same couple years back, and they started praying whether they should introduce us or not. They did. So it's a blind date. I often say that she was blind. But, in a way, do you know what we did on our first date? We did this. We life mapped. We shared our maps together because we saw how our backgrounds were very similar, and we could understand each other very well, especially with our evangelical background and desire to serve the Lord. And so we really came in, so to speak, into this marriage I did with eyes wide open, with a purpose and goals. And so we discussed all those things, and even on our first date. And of course, it was pretty quick from April to December. I was older, so I said, you get older, you have to be quick about these things. Besides, I was worried that Kathy would say no, so I'd say yes and then not marry me. But short period of time. Anyway, she had the courage to marry me, so that's a wonderful thing. Her father, Father Ray, he was a wonderful man that I became very close to. He was a minister, and ever since 1960s when he was in Vietnam, he was thinking about the Catholic Church, and he noticed how in Vietnam when young men go out to battle, they didn't want to hear a sermon. They wanted the Eucharist. It was very special to them at that moment. So that got him to thinking, and so we were both reading Thomas Merton, and a lot of the things, we just came together, and so that accelerated my journey, anyways, into the Catholic Church. So the next thing was important reading. I told you about John of the Cross last time, how important he is with the Dark Night of the Soul. Well, actually, the Dark Night of the Soul is a sweet sequel to the first volume, which is The Ascent of Mount Carmel. And I didn't have much Catholic philosophy and theology behind me, so I slogged through it for a whole year, and started to get some sense of what St. John of the Cross was. Okay, and then I remember reading Aquinas in 1994. Evelyn Underhill's book on mysticism, it's a classic. She was a high church Anglican that wanted to convert to Catholicism, but she was in a marriage, wouldn't allow her to do that. But it's such a magnificent read. And what that did is it put my whole spiritual life up to that point into perspective and the broad scope of spirituality. It was just a fantastic read. And then there was John of Roysbrook. I remember picking up an old volume. I didn't know who he was from Adam, but The Spiritual Espousals, 1995, 1996. So, as I told you, reading's a big deal, and that certainly became a big deal to me, Abby was born on December 10th, 1994. Our screaming redheaded daughter, that's what the doctor said. He had a German accent. He said, screaming red hair, I'll never forget that. A wonderful moment in our life. It's, of course, a life-changing thing when you have a kid, it changes everything. So what else do we have here? In the September of 1995, I began attending an Episcopal church. Now, you don't know how big of a deal that was, because I was teaching in a seminary, and I had some colleagues who it turned out over the summer was not dealt well. They were not dealt well in the churches that they were ministering to. And I saw what a congregational church does, and how it's operated. And there was no place for my colleagues to appeal, because, one board member made a certain decision and they were fired. And so I was kind of disgruntled now with the congregational government or the government of so many Protestant churches. And I thought, I'm putting in gas in my car at a gas station. My eyes just wandered across the street to one of these charming, and they're almost all charming, old Episcopal church. And, typical red door and everything like that. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go there and knock on the door. I was a little scared to do this because what's going to come out? Maybe a Druid priest or something like that. You got to remember, I came from the Baptist background. Anyways, the priest did come out, and he was pretty decent, and didn't seem scary at all. So, anyways, from that moment on, from 1995 and on, through the Episcopal Church, I was starting to get a sense of the liturgy, and the seasons and the calendar. You got to understand, come from a Baptist world, all this, all this is very, very new, okay? It takes acclimation. It's a whole different worldview, okay? Let's see here. Then Jeremy was born, my son, on June 10th, 1996. So we had 2 kids right off the bat, and it's great to have a girl and a boy. Great gifts from God. Again, a life changer, right? And then we lived in a place called Lansdowne, PA, which is kind of like a suburb of Philadelphia, from 1995 to 2000. Those were good years, again, this whole time I was teaching at Seminary of the East, and where I started. There was an important moment on the 11th, November 17th, 1998. I referenced that recently in one of my sermons, okay, when I was talking about being a missionary disciple, when your identity changes from being something to another. Like for me, I was a seminary professor, and at this point, my identity clearly came to my mind, said, I'm a missionary disciple, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. Where I said, I do not belong to Athens and its academy. I belong to Jerusalem, the city of God, where there's a stream makes glad the city of God. That was an important point in my life as I look back at it, because it allowed other things to happen. You see, I started reading Carl Jung a bit, the psychologist, about dreams and all that sort of thing, and how important they are. And dreams have been really important to me as I read through my journals. Yeah. In the summer of 1999, I had the strangest experience. I started reading The Way of the Pilgrim. Okay. It's by an anonymous author, and it's about a Russian man, okay, who runs into all these prayer warriors in Russia who say the Jesus prayer all the time. And so I read this book, and I thought to myself, well, it's not going to work for me, but I'm going to say the Jesus prayer. I'm going to see, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. That's as simple as it is. And so I started saying this prayer for 10 minutes. Oh, I can do 10 minutes. Well, let's see if I can do it for half an hour. I did half an hour, and I wasn't really pressed for time that day, so I thought, I'll keep on doing it for an hour. And then went for 2 hours, and then went all day long. And then it went all week long, and it went for 2 or 3 whole months. I was even saying the Jesus prayer in my sleep, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. And after a while, it abated, but it left with me a prayer that was so important in my life because it guards me. It comes up naturally in my mind as a guard to my soul. If anything evil is there, it just naturally comes up like a guardian to my soul. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. Every day, there's not a day in this world, in my life, I don't say. I say it during Mass at quiet times. I say it, it just pops up because it got deep into my psyche and in my soul. So that was a very formative time in my life, and it continues on even right now. Okay. The fall of 1999, let me back up. In the summer of 1999, my father-in-law got involved in a church called the Charismatic Episcopal Church. Okay, and I won't go into what it was, but what was really attractive to me is that there was a religious community that was part of this organization. Actually, it's in Maryland, and not far from Eldersburg, and near Liberty Town, and it had 160 some acres of land, and it had a little church to it. Where the members of this community worship, but also those around in the area who traveled there. And it's a small church, 100 people, but I've never experienced worship like I did that place. I mean, it's amazing what few committed people can do. Not it was just amazing. The music, it was so beautiful, uplifting. That my wife and I just looked at each other and said, wow, this is something. Oh, by the way, before that, not too long before that, maybe within a year, I remember my wife and I looking at each other at one point and saying, our life here is not doing it. We're not living and coming close to our goals that we set at our marriage. So, you know, uh, this church was like an open door here. So we went there for a retreat that summer, and I was going to ask my wife to, sell a house and give up her life in a way. But halfway through, she asked me and said, well, "We haven't really prayed about this, have we?" I said, "Whoa!" So we decided it was God's will for us to sell our house and live in community. Okay, it was kind of like a Benedictine, devoted to prayer, study, and work, and that really set our life on course. Oh my, life and community, something's not right here. I'm supposed to come up. This isn't supposed to work this way. I'm supposed to bring up everything. Well, I'll just have to point things out with my pointer here. Um, in March 2000, we came to community to test a call. Okay, and uh, in as we were there, the priest who was over the community saw that I had a call to be a priest, and actually for 20 years I did a roundabout like a Jonah to Nineveh type thing. Okay, and so I had to say yes because I knew God's calling me to be a priest, and so I became a priest in 2001 in the Charismatic Episcopal Church. Of course, another big event of 2001 was the 9/11 event, which my family and I watched. Remember the time? Okay, in 2001, my son was like 3 or 4 years old, and he remembers that. That's one of his first memories. And maybe it had something to do with the fact that he decided to join the military. I think a lot of kids of his generation did it for that reason. After being there for a couple of years, we became professed. We went from novice we were novices for a while, and then we became professed members. That means we vowed to stay there for the rest of our lives. Whoa, that's heavy. The community had some religious in it, that is, some sisters, like 7 of them, and there were no brothers there, but there were married couples there that became professed, and we thought that's what God wanted us to do. In the spring of 2002, well, I knew that when I became a priest, my friends over at Seminary of the East, they said, this is going a little too far. We can't keep you here. It's after all these years of teaching at the Seminary of the East, which is so formative to me and so wonderful. But I knew that all along that I was going to probably end up losing my job anyways because of the direction my life was taking. It's hard for a Baptist school to have, a priest that's teaching in this. But anyways, I left and I became a dean of a little seminary that the community had there that served the Charismatic Episcopal Church in the area. Okay, so I was able to live there and work at the community, and there I really began to enter into my call with all sorts of pastoral duties, caring for people in all different kinds of pastoral ways. Just getting used to being up in front of people and then getting to understand the liturgy a little bit. So that was huge. Okay. Then there was a crisis in the CEC denomination at the time. I don't need to go into it, but this weighed heavily on the priest that was running the community. He was an abbot, so to speak, and because of that, I had to take more and more responsibility at the community. And there I learned again a little bit about what it takes to be in the ministry. Okay, and in 2008, because the breakdown of the community became so unhealthy for my family, I decided that we needed to leave. And with our leaving and with a number of people, the community just folded. So this was a wonderful time. A wonderful time, I think, for our kids because they were raised. We were homeschooling them. They were raised on his farm. They were able to take all sorts of pets and animals and sunny days out in the fields and the streams and all that sort of thing. In some ways, it was idyllic for the kids. In some ways, not, because they end up seeing at the end, disappointment, how people in ministry can disappoint, and so that they took that with them too, and something they have to deal with. But homeschooling was a lot of fun. My wife did it when they're in their younger years, and as we shall see in the next slide, I took over some of that in the kids' later years. So, anyways, that's these 2 slides, and the next installment will come next week. Again, here's 2 disasters. The failure of a marriage on the last slide, a couple slides ago, and here a failure of a community that we professed ourselves to be, and we thought we were going to be there, and the pain and the anguish of it all. A lot of people thought we were drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, Jim Jones stuff, by joining this community. But again, we felt it was the right thing to do, and it was an important stage in our lives. Okay, so a lot of ups and downs, and I'm sure that your life has lots of ups and downs. Maybe you're not a reader, maybe books are not influencing you so much, but what is? What sort of people are influencing in your life? What are the major influencers that form and shape you? for good or for ill. Okay, and these are things that we need to be honest about with ourselves. Maybe we started some bad habits, whatever they may be, at a certain time in our life. What spurred that on? Okay, well, maybe some good habits, not just all negative. Um, but God's in your life. Your life is holy. Okay, if you're watching this, your life is holy because you care about your life and you know that it means something, and you want it to become as full as it possibly can be. So, having said that, have fun working on your life map. God bless you.